What if walking barefoot in your own yard got you arrested, a $300 fine, and a police showdown? In Utah, Ben Carter's simple freedom turned into an HOA nightmare. Stay tuned for a story of liberty, injustice, and a community's fight to reclaim their rights. In the tranquil suburb of Willow Grove, Utah, where the air was crisp and the Wasatch Mountains loomed in the distance, 35-year-old Ben Carter lived a life of laid-back simplicity. A freelance graphic designer who worked from home, Ben had bought his $310,000 two-story home in 2022, a cozy space with a small backyard where he often unwound after long hours at his desk. On the cool morning of March 5, 2026, Ben stepped outside barefoot, the soft grass tickling his toes with a gentle rustle, the fresh scent of dew filling the air as he sipped his coffee, the ceramic mug warm in his hands, a moment of peace in his busy life. Willow Grove was governed by a strict homeowners association led by 58-year-old President Margaret Steele, a retired city planner who enforced rules with an unyielding hand. Margaret saw the neighborhood as a model of perfection. No mess, no deviations, and certainly no behavior that could lower standards, even on private property. The HOA bylaws stated, "No resident may appear in public areas without proper attire, including footwear, with a $300 fine per violation," a rule Margaret extended to include private yards, claiming bare feet were unsanitary. That morning, as she walked her dog through the neighborhood, the jingle of its collar a soft sound. She spotted Ben in his yard, his bare feet a blatant violation in her eyes. Her lips pursed, her grip tightening on the leash, and she muttered to herself, "Barefoot in the yard. That's unacceptable. He's getting fined." At 8:15 a.m., just as Ben set his mug down on the patio table with a soft clink, the piercing wail of police sirens shattered the morning calm. He turned, the grass brushing against his feet, as a police cruiser rolled into the cul-de-sac, its tires crunching on the pavement, red and blue lights flashing in the pale sunlight. Two officers stepped out, their boots thudding against the ground. The lead officer, 42-year-old James Holt, adjusting his belt as he approached. "Sir, we've had a complaint about improper attire," Officer Holt said, his voice stern and unyielding, cutting through the rustling grass. Ben's brow furrowed, his hands resting on his hips as he stepped forward. "A complaint? I'm barefoot in my own yard," he said, his voice rising with disbelief, the words carrying across the quiet morning. Margaret, who had followed with her dog, stepped forward with a stern expression, clutching a fine notice in her hand, the dog's leash jangling softly at her side. "Your bare feet violate HOA rules and pose a health risk," she declared, her tone sharp and authoritative. "That's a $300 fine, payable immediately." Ben's jaw dropped, his voice shaking as he gestured to the grass. "This is my property. I'm not hurting anyone," he protested, his words overlapping with the sound of Margaret tearing the fine notice from her pad, the paper ripping with a harsh sound. Officer Holt, known in Willow Grove for his strict enforcement of HOA complaints, wasn't swayed. "If you don't comply, I'll have to arrest you for resisting authority," he snapped, his tone icy as he unhooked his handcuffs from his belt, the metal clanking ominously. Ben stood his ground, his heart pounding, refusing to accept the fine for something so trivial. "This is ridiculous. I'm not a criminal," he shouted, his voice echoing through the yard, the grass still cool beneath his feet. Officer Holt stepped forward, his face set in a hard line, and grabbed Ben's arm with a firm grip, the handcuffs snapping shut around his wrists with a sharp click. "You're coming with us," he growled, his voice low, as he led Ben to the cruiser, the door slamming shut with a heavy thud. Margaret handed the fine notice to a neighbor who had come out to watch, the paper crinkling as she walked away with her dog, its collar jingling faintly, leaving Ben's yard empty. The grass now trampled from the scuffle, the morning peace shattered. Ben spent 3 hours in a holding cell at the local precinct, the hum of fluorescent lights above him, a constant reminder of his ordeal, before being released with a warning. When he returned home, the $300 fine notice lay on his doorstep, slightly crumpled, the ink bold against the white paper. He couldn't let this go, not just for himself, but for every resident in Willow Grove who deserved the freedom to enjoy their own property. Word of the incident spread through the neighborhood, shared during school pickups and whispered at the local park. The residents, many of whom found the HOA's rules increasingly oppressive, were outraged, and a group of neighbors, led by 39-year-old librarian Sarah Evans, organized a protest to support him. The next evening at 6 p.m., dozens of residents gathered in front of Ben's house, their footsteps rustling the grass as they marched barefoot through the neighborhood, their voices rising in chants of "freedom to walk" that echoed through the streets, a defiant stand against the HOA's control. Families joined in, their bare feet leaving prints in the dew-covered grass, children giggling as they ran alongside their parents, a symbol of reclaimed liberty in the face of absurdity. The protest caught the attention of the Willow Grove Tribune, which ran a story titled "Man Arrested for Being Barefoot in Yard. Neighbors Protest HOA." The reporter's voice amplifying the community's anger through a local radio broadcast. Encouraged by the support, Ben decided to sue the HOA, hiring a lawyer, 46-year-old Emily Foster, who specialized in property rights cases. Emily argued that the HOA had no authority to regulate private behavior on private property and that the police had abused their authority by arresting Ben over a civil dispute, her voice steady and commanding in the courtroom. The trial drew a crowd of Willow Grove residents, their footsteps shuffling as they filled the benches, their murmurs a quiet buzz of anticipation. Ben took the stand, his voice firm as he recounted the morning, his words carrying the weight of his frustration. "I was just enjoying my yard, barefoot, on my own property," he said, his tone unwavering. "They turned it into a crime." Emily presented legal precedents protecting personal freedoms on private land, her arguments sharp and compelling, the rustle of documents loud as she handed them to the judge. But Margaret and the HOA board were unyielding. Margaret claimed Ben's bare feet threatened community standards and sanitation, her voice nasal and sharp, her fingers tapping impatiently on the table. Officer Holt defended the arrest, insisting Ben's refusal to comply justified his actions, his tone gruff and unapologetic. The judge, a 63-year-old known for upholding HOA authority, sided with the HOA, his gavel slamming down with a resounding thud that silenced the room. "The bylaws prioritize community standards," he declared, his voice booming, the echo lingering. Ben was ordered to pay the $300 fine, plus $2,000 in HOA legal fees, the verdict a crushing blow that left him staring at the floor, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The aftermath was grim. The HOA, emboldened by the ruling, tightened restrictions on personal behavior, announcing the new rule at the next meeting. Margaret's voice echoing through the community center's speakers with a new fine of $400 for violations. Ben, financially strained, had to cut back on his freelance projects, the sound of his disappointed sighs a constant reminder of the cost. Willow Grove, once a place of relaxed freedom, became a battleground, with residents fearing the HOA's unchecked power. Ben stopped going barefoot in his yard, the grass now untouched by his feet. The crisp mornings, a haunting reminder of the liberty he'd lost, the neighborhood streets quieter without his carefree steps. And so, a moment of barefoot freedom became a battle for justice in Willow Grove, Utah. Was Ben wrong to enjoy his own yard, or did the HOA go too far with their rules? What do you think? Should walking barefoot be a crime on your own property? Share your thoughts and join us next time for another tale of HOA madness. Until then, keep fighting for what's right. Thank you for listening.